Hello, my name's Stephen Galpin and welcome to Property Question Time. With me today I have two experts who'll be answering your questions, and first I have Rob Jenkins, who's a Director of Connect UK Auctions. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you very much indeed.
I understand your company's just introduced the latest in interactive auctions. Well done.
We have, yes, we have indeed. Yeah.
Good, okay. And on your left and on my right, John Howard, property developer, author, public speaker, estate agent, generally a good chap. Welcome, John.
Do you know, that's the nicest thing you've ever said to me. I'm going to take that, and of course it's going to be recorded, so you can't really take it back.
Well, that's absolutely right. So there we are. Fresh start, John. How's that? Okay. Well, John, you're going to be first with the first question. So, with the world in turmoil from the coronavirus and the stock markets reeling from the economic consequences, do the panel think this will enhance the prospects for the property market as it being seen as a safe haven?
Very good question, and I think the answer probably changes. Don't know what Rob thinks, but I think the answer probably changes every week now.
Yeah.
I mean, at the moment, the domestic market that I thought would hold up okay has done far better than that
Right.
coming out of COVID. It is absolutely thriving, and prices are going up in certain areas. Now, you could argue that's coming out of people want to come out of London to Norfolk and Suffolk, where we're based. You can sort of understand that, but I'm told also that the London market is also very strong, which I don't quite understand. Now, the domestic market is one thing, but the commercial market and the that type of market, the commercial industrial market, more commercial to be fair, is in all sorts of dire trouble in my view, because people are working from home. Some of these big companies are already saying they don't need so many offices. Less people are going to be working from those offices. So there's going to be a huge change, and the sooner people get used to that change, the better, because I think we're not going back to how we were. People have got better quality of life, they're seeing their children more, they're not getting on the train every day. They might still have to go in 2 or 3 times a week, twice a week maybe. Now for young people that's different, I understand that, and probably they want to be in office all week, and I think these city centres are going to be for younger people only really on the whole. We're going to have like villages in the city where people are going to live, better quality of life. The office market is going to be in turmoil. Most of these big offices are worth half what they're valued at now, and the same with the big shops. They're worth half, because anybody renting these offices and shops, even before COVID, was saying, certainly on the shops, oh well, I'll give you half the rent that I'm paying now. John, so it's big changes.
John, we've had this discussion before, the difference between in residential terms, buying an apartment for a home or buying it for an investment.
Absolutely, yes.
And of course, especially in London, our market's been propped up by overseas purchasers.
Yes.
What do you think is going to happen there? I mean, I have a feeling that we may even see exchange controls brought in by some countries, that want to see inward investment, not millions of dollars and pounds and whatever going abroad.
Well, I'm surprised that the London market is so strong at the moment. I have to say that. However, London's a big city, and I think the more vulnerable areas are the areas on the edge of London. You know, these 3-bedroom semi-detached houses that are £700,000-800,000 that, an hour down the road are 250, 300,000. I think they're vulnerable because I think people will want a better quality of life and actually can move further out, not going to work every day, and so on. Central London, it's like investing in gold, isn't it, really, to be fair?
Well, it is. I mean, we've got some of the best real estate laws and legislation in the world, haven't we? It's a safe haven.
Absolutely,
It
it's
really
a safe
is.
haven.
All right, so John, we always see a tremendous influx of overseas cash, and it's this difference between buying a home, particularly in London, or whether it's for investment for overseas people, for their kids at uni or whatever else. Do you think that side of the market's going to dry up?
I think in London it's got to, isn't it? I mean, there's so much being built and so much reliance on foreign investment. You do think that some of these developments in London in the longer term have got to be very vulnerable. For the buy-to-let investors across the UK, I think it's different for two reasons. One, they're borrowing off building societies on the whole, and as long as they keep up the repayments, they're not going to, even if the market goes down a bit, they're not going to have their house or flat repossessed. As long as it's let, they're going to be fine. And I think that they look at us over long term, and if you buy one now and you're buying over a 20, 25 year period, then, you know, as long as you buy in the right areas, even if it goes down a bit, it will come back and improve vastly over 20 years probably. And Rob, you're seeing in auctions at the moment, I mean, for this, the market is hot as hell, isn't it?
Absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, we are busy beyond, you know, obviously.
Your wildest dreams?
Well, I wouldn't say we've got there quite yet, but hopefully, yeah, hopefully.
Rob, are you seeing entrance into the auction market from previous buy-to-let investors?
As in, they are purchasing at the rooms?
Well, I don't mean purchasing. I mean being forced to sell, I suppose, really.
Yes, I mean, again, I think certainly over the course of the next few months, we're going to see more and more. With the investor side, more of the sort of part-time investors, you know, who are, you know, there's different tax implications now. If they have problematic tenants, for instance, you know, a lot of people haven't been able to pay their rent, they will be offloading. But
there's a lot stacking up against the small investor, isn't there?
Yeah.
There's the tax changes.
Yeah, the tax change, but you know, the tax changes, I read the other day, the government are owed £1.7 billion in tax by private landlords who haven't paid the tax they were due to pay. That's why now the best thing is to be in a limited company, so the government you do an annual return and the government know what you owed. And that's why they're not, you know, they've been selling these flats and houses, not paying capital gains on them, you know, and the rest of us, Rob, me, and even you, Stephen, are having to pick up the bill.
Yeah. Well, difficult times ahead.
Exciting, challenging times, but exciting times, Stephen.
Well, let's hope there is opportunity there. Rob, going to come to you now.
Yeah, absolutely.
With sales in the residential market over the last few months being very slow due to restrictions on conveyancing and the general effects of the pandemic, does the panel think that auctioning a property is a viable and perhaps more speedy way of selling a property as opposed to using a conventional estate agent?
Yes, let me elaborate.
Yeah, please do, yes.
Well, I mean, private treaty sales obviously is you know, a very traditional method. The auction side is certainly separate, but the key thing with the auction is no fall-throughs. So on the day of auction, when the property sells or the lot sells, it's exchange of contracts on the day, and that gives the security. So in any market where, you know, the public are generally, you know, struggling to sell, or they have agreed a sale or it's fallen through, rest assured with the auction side of things, you will get a far swifter transaction, but it's secure as well. So the exchange happens, which when we're all selling property, and we've all been there, and things do fall through, unfortunately.
All the time.
The one thing the auction brings to the table in choppy times is no fall-throughs. So
Certainty.
Right, well,
absolutely, certainty and security.
I can see that point, but I can also see that if you took your house away from an agent or didn't give them to the agent in the first place, then the market is somewhat restricted in the auction area, isn't it? I mean, I talk to members of the public and they're always rather frightened of auctions.
Yes.
Will I have the cash? Will I be able to borrow? Will I be able to do this and that? So although the fall-through rate is a lot less, is the market wide enough to market what I would say a normal property?
I mean, again, there are certain properties which would certainly benefit from going through the private treaty route. You know, and without a shadow of a doubt, if the market wasn't there, we wouldn't have that private treaty route. But the sort of properties that, you know, fare well in the room aren't necessarily just your traditional properties which are structural damage or falling down. We do sell now a lot of properties to owner-occupiers, and again, the clients who are selling, it's speed and security. Now, we can offer a slightly delayed completion, which allows our purchasers now to get high street mortgages, and that's really opened up the market. And we're selling things now in the room, which 5-10 years ago we wouldn't even contemplate taking on the market.
Right.
So,
what's the position for a purchaser who does bid at an auction, buys the property? I mean, it's a binding contract, isn't it?
absolutely.
But
yeah.
what happens if they've made you aware that they do need a mortgage, go away, and then something goes wrong and they can't get the mortgage? What happens then?
Well, we do all our checks. So for anyone that wants to register to bid, they will have to provide all the documentations, which will allow us to vet them.
Are we going back to the old system of getting mortgages in principle? Do you remember that, John?
I do.
Agree, yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, again, it's we can't be seen to sell a property in the room and then they can't deliver. The vetting process is very, very strict, and we have to see proof of funds for the deposit, and if they're getting bridging, we have to have confirmation from the bridging company. Or obviously you've got your agreement in principle where a member of the registration team will confirm that everything's in place.
Right. And what's the sort of lead-in time from saying, right, I'm going to go to auction, I'd like to go through your vetting process.
Mm-hmm.
How long has a purchaser got to sort of get all the ducks in a row before the auction day? What sort of time span would he have?
So for us to register them,
For you to register them and then put
well,
in place?
we ask for 3 days. That's what we ask. So prior to the auction, the last registration really is about 72 hours prior.
Right.
If somebody comes to the auction and wants to register on the day and they are 100% cash and they've brought along proof of funds, then it can be done. But again, it's key for us to do our due diligence, make sure that, if they're the winning bidder on the day, that they're in a position to complete on the property.
Okay, gents, thank you very much. We're going to go to a break now. Join me when we come back. Hello and welcome back to part 2 of Property Question Time. I'm Stephen Galpin and with me are John Howard and Rob Jenkins. Welcome back, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
John, your second question.
Yes.
Do the experts think that enough thought is being put into new housing developments in terms of eco-friendly technical innovations, or are these being ignored in a race for volume in the housing market?
Great question.
Well, I mean, I hope...
Is it a loaded question?
I hope you've been listening to our 12th housing minister in 10 years about all this.
Well, I know he's the MP for Tamworth. So, what I would
I'm
say...
not sure where that is either.
No, we're near Birmingham.
Right.
So I've got some commercial property there. That's why I know it so well. So what I would say is this: I think that the government are on the right lines with regards to technology and all the rest of it, green issues, green policies. Any new property now, you've got to go through the whole eco system, if you like. If you're not putting in all these insulation levels and so on, you can't build it. So I think, to be fair, I think it's taken them a long time to get their act together, but now they've got their act together. But of course, what it does do, all this, it just costs more money. So all the time, all these contractors and the builders, they're getting more and more expensive to build because of all the kit you've got to put in these houses. I'm not saying it's a bad thing at all, and I did try an electric car this week. So even I am getting there. However, it is expensive, and it has to be reflected in the price of the new home.
I think my grievance always is that they're inconsistent. I mean, I know on this development we did down the road here, we were told we had to put in biomass boilers.
Yep.
Okay. I think it was thick end of £2 million to put them in.
Yep.
Now, of course, the residents pay for that on the price. It's not the developer that pays, it's the person that's living in the flats pays at the end of the day. And then what happened is you have all the stuff delivered, all the wood chips and all the rest of it, and then they realise that these wood chips are combustible, it's a fire risk, so the biomass boiler had to be shut down.
But Stephen, worse than that, you've got a big lorry delivering it. So I mean, how is that a green policy? You know, these things have to be worked out better, and I think finally they have. But of course, like you said, biomass was all the rage 5-10 years ago. Now they go, oh no, it's 2 days. So things change all the time, and that's the problem we have. But I think there is some consistency now, and technology has moved on. Of course, that's the other thing. A friend of mine had one of these systems in where you go under the ground, warm air. What's it called? Soil under the ground. Soil.
With a heat exchanger.
Heat exchange.
Yeah.
And he said his bath was lukewarm. He said I needed the immersion. I got another friend who had one of these windmills. He said it's great if you want a cup of tea, John, but that's all I get out of it, unless the wind's really blowing. So they've moved on from there. You know, they are better than they were, and they will continue to get better.
Yeah.
Just like electric cars will get better.
You see, I'm all for, you know, good green ideas, solid ideas that work, that are practical, and that don't involve the residents having huge heating and cooling bills for the sake of being green, because that
defeats the object.
It totally defeats the object. And when you have the government who come in, I mean, I think, you know, a few weeks ago, you know, he's going to legislate so that we have fruit trees planted in the gardens of all new homes. Well, you know, that's really going to set the market on fire, isn't it? You know, I've been a magistrate for a number of years, and you sit in court and you hear this and that and the other. I wouldn't like to be the district judge sitting in court when his legislation comes in now that says all flats must be allowed to have a pet in them. But when that's in direct conflict with the head lease,
exactly. What happens?
Whose law takes precedence?
Yeah.
I don't know. And this is the problem.
Ill thought out gimmicks is how I see it.
Yeah.
Those are ill thought out gimmicks. They don't work. Yeah. But there is some solid work going on behind all that, and I think it's a shame that whether it's the press that pick up on these gimmicks or it's the government that push them out to the press, it's a shame, because behind all that there are some genuine people working very, very hard to try and improve the housing stock in the UK and increase the numbers we're doing. You know, we're still only building 240,000 a year. We need to build 500,000. A lot of work to do.
Yes, I mean, I know we're having planning changes in September, but I'm not necessarily sure that's the
white paper,
the key to it.
Yeah, the white paper. Let's wait till it's law, shall we? Because the white paper is really just the start. That will be negotiated on by all these MPs. It will be watered down because no MP wants to lose their seat, because it's their area that's going to be awash with new homes. Sadly,
true enough.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think, Rob?
Well, I certainly I agree there. I think it's all very well having having the idea there put in place, but by the time it gets down to the council, the local council, the implementing. It sounds like a good idea, but it's just the concept, taking it from A and getting it to or over the finishing line.
And some of these things, well, making them work as well, because it's like it's who wants a lukewarm bath? You know,
absolutely,
it's crazy.
Yeah.
So I suppose really, John, we ought to answer the question.
What was the question?
Are we doing enough to put eco-friendly measures into building?
I think we are now. I don't think we have done up to this point, but I think now we are. Yes.
Okay. Thank you for that. Rob, your second question. If one is considering buying a residential property at auction, is it possible to get pre-approval for a mortgage? And if so, how does one deal with the question of valuations? I really would appreciate advice on this.
Yep, very, very good question. We get asked that a lot, actually. So I'll start off with, well, firstly, yes, you can. If we're speaking to somebody that's looking to register their interest and they'd like to buy it, but they're getting a mortgage, the key thing about the auction is we don't know what level the property is going to sell at. So if they're going to their broker or their lender, the key thing is how much are you paying. So whereas they can't answer that question because we haven't got to that stage yet. So the advice we hand out is what is your, what would you offer for it? And we look at that figure, and then we can advise that yes, we feel you should then go through that.
Well, can I jump in there?
Absolutely.
My advice to anyone is not tell the auctioneer what they're going to pay.
Well, absolutely.
I know you want that information, but please, viewers, don't tell him.
The emotional attachment.
But Rob, isn't it a bit more fundamental than that? Because we were talking earlier about the registration process, and you were saying, right, well, as long as it's 3 days before, that works well. Well, I mean, I'm sure, like most of us, you've been to a mortgage broker or a building society and wanted a mortgage, and it takes a lot longer than 3 days to get any kind of answer, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, again, most people have been to the broker beforehand, before they've even started looking. I mean, generally the owner-occupiers, our purchasers, owner-occupiers, haven't even considered the auction route. They've been going out with the estate agents, and it's just that it may well have come up in one of the portals. They've seen it, it's in their area, it looks the one for them. So the agreement in principle is generally always there. Obviously the next stage would be the valuation. Now, again, going down the private treaty route, it's very much agree a sale, then it's get the mortgage valuation done. A lot of our buyers are confident enough and they will have the valuation done after auction. However, if they wish to get access to any property or any lot, we offer that, absolutely. There's no problem with the access.
But really, Rob, they're right in a way, because actually it's an open market, you know, it's an auction market. If they end up buying that for that price, that should be what it's worth.
Absolutely.
That's what the market tells. The market's dictated the price. So no valuer should. They've got to have some balls. The valuer to go against. I know they do sometimes. Yeah. But I mean, they must have some balls to go against the market, really.
Absolutely.
John, I've spent my life arguing with valuers.
Me too. I know. But in practice, it doesn't have. It doesn't have as much as it used to, I don't think, to be fair.
Always get the keys ready. That's what I was saying. Yeah. Always get the keys ready. When I started off in the stage, always have the keys ready. Otherwise, if they get a parking ticket,
that's a good
then you're getting down valued.
Exactly.
Rob, is there any, let's say, lender nervousness or resistance to somebody who's wanting to buy in an auction?
Yes. I mean, again, there is the stigma that all purchases at auctions are all 100% cash. You know, a lot of them, and the majority of them are, for those sort of, what shall we say, more traditional properties, you know, something with a structural damage you wouldn't be able to get lending on anyway. But because the market is opening up to the lots that we're offering, so it's very much, you know, I think, you know, I do like my figures, but it's about 35%, I think, at the last auction, actually owner-occupier properties.
Interesting.
So, you know, and this is the way things are going. So, but yeah, I mean, people are nervous as long as it's explained that, you know, access can always be gained, and, you know, if they're happy to lend on it, then, you know, the client's happy.
Yes. And do you see auctions now taking a more significant part in normal house sales? And when I say normal house sales, I mean people buying for a home.
Well, I mean, I think the whole of auction sales across the UK only makes up about 5% of all transactions in the UK. So we've got a long way to go. I mean, certainly the key element is for the purchaser and the seller is, you know, for the purchaser, they're not going to lose it. They've exchanged, and the seller, they're not going to get fall through. And that's the key. I think moving forward, there's definitely a big place for it moving forward.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. That's all we've got time for today. So, my thanks to Rob Jenkins from
Thank you very much.
UK Auctions, and for John Howard, property developer.
Pleasure.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Join me again next time on Property Question Time.